Hello, looks like we're live. Hey everyone, and this is Paulo, and this is something that I should have done a few days ago. Last weekend, uh, we, it was Saturday, but last weekend, not this weekend. I was in Coimbra, in the center of Portugal, for a comic book convention, one of the few we have, and I was going there to take the opportunity to interview R.M. Guera, the artist on Scalped and The Goddamned, but I couldn't do it. The schedule was a bit hectic, so there was no opportunity for it. And I bought a few books, including the Portuguese release of the Goddamned, which I wanted to get signed, but couldn't. I left my copy of the Goddamned with a friend so he could get it signed afterwards, because I had to travel back down. It was a 2-hour drive. I took a friend with me. I didn't want to go alone. João Marques, excellent road trip companion, and but I couldn't get to have my new comic signed at the time. One of the things we have in Portugal, it's not customary for artists to charge for sketches. Uh, Usually, when we take the book to get signed, they'll do a quick sketch on it. But since they don't charge, which is actually they're kind of warned by the organizer not to charge, and they usually comply because when they come to Portugal, usually they come with all expenses paid, the trip, accommodation, food. So since everything is for free, and they won't be spending any money. If the host wants them not to charge, they won't. The thing is, there are people that we have in our conventions that even though they did not buy any books by the author, they have no intention of buying any books by the author. They will show up with an attitude, "Hi, I've never heard of you, but since you're here, you're going to give me a sketch." And they pull out their pad with sketches that they get from previous conventions, from a bunch of artists, some of them they've never heard of. And R.M. Guera, it did in the 40 minutes that I was in the line to get my comic signed, and I had to leave because I wanted to watch one of the conferences. Um, and I think he only signed books for about 2 people, and there were a couple of sketch hunters ahead of me as well. And I was in line for 40 minutes, and I basically did not move from the same place. So this is quite annoying. If you have no, I know this would not happen in the United States, or even the United Kingdom. I know that it's normal for artists to charge for sketches, which I think is perfectly legitimate. If they draw for a living, they should not be obliged to draw something for you for free. At best, they might want to do a quick sketch when they sign your book. But this is really annoying, and it usually happens that when there are artists that get a big line in our conventions, I simply won't bother getting their comic signed. And this kind of bummed me out a bit because I didn't get the chance to interview RM Guera. His real name is Rajko Milosevic. Is a Serbian, but he's lived in Barcelona since the early 90s. And so getting him to come to Portugal was not a problem. Another guest at the convention was Italian artist Walter Venturi. He is mostly known for drawing the Tex Western comic, which is something that Guera is also working on. Is going to be getting a Tex comic published. Tex is the type of comic that it's been published for so long in Italy that it's part of regular culture. People read text comics. As a matter of fact, they don't even have to be regular comic book fans. And I shown this in one of the videos that I posted earlier today. The art exhibit devoted to Tex Willer and a few other Bonelli characters. So yeah, so getting a big name to draw for Tex is a bit out of the ordinary. A couple of years ago, there was an issue with Mike Diodato, who was supposed to draw an issue of Tex, and he ended up not doing it. And about 25 years ago, I think, 2025, probably around that time, Joe Kubert drew a special edition graphic novel that was written by one of the most prominent text writers. Uh, so, uh, so now for that's it. If you look at my videos page, you'll find a few of the videos that I posted earlier. We're already getting visitors here. Hello, Bad Avenger. How are you? So time to show my purchases. So as I said, I won't be showing the Portuguese edition of The Condemned because I haven't gotten it back from my friend yet. But there were a few other things that I've been able to buy, including this French comic book, Giant. This is issue number 1. And this is issue number 2. So this is a comic book about skyscraper builders, the people that built the skyscrapers in New York in the 1920s and 30s. The story is set in 1932, and it has some interesting art. The writer and artist is called Mikhail. Hope you can see that. And I saw this for sale, and I thought this looks very interesting. This comic book is in French. There's no Portuguese edition. Maybe they can get it published in the U.S. I think that Res Reads and Damien and maybe Samuel Trejo would like this. This is pretty good art. And they have a couple of few sketches at the end. I hadn't heard of this artist, Mikhail. He has here a bibliography. There's a series called Clair de Lune with 3 books that he wrote and drew, plus another series, Promise, where he was the artist working from a script by Thierry Lamy. So once again, issue number 1 of Giant, and number 2. Besides the goddamn, the few books were just hit the Portuguese market. This is Man Plus. It was published in the United States and the United Kingdom by Titan Comics. It's a science fiction story set in a futuristic Lisbon. The art looks a bit influenced by Druillet, but also as a hint of manga. The writer and artist is André Lima Araújo. He's from Portugal, but he works mainly for the American market. And this was an opportunity he had from Kingpin Books to get the book finally published in Portugal. And this took a little bit of adaptation to work with a with the Portuguese language. It wasn't because Andrea wrote the script directly in English, and when the editor Mario asked for the original Portuguese script, there wasn't one. So Andre had to cook one up just specifically for this issue. So he had to write the same book twice in order to tell the same story in two different languages. The story is set, like I said, the story is set in a fictional Lisbon, where Chinese corporations took over the majority of the Portuguese territory. Some people are worried about a Muslim invasion of Europe. They should be more concerned about a Chinese invasion, economic invasion. There's a lot of Chinese investors looking for, mainly for buildings and places to build warehouses. This is pretty good. The story is a bit like Blade Runner. There's a group of police officers chasing an android that supposedly achieved sentience, and they can't explain how, but they finally get to find out, and that leaves it open for a sequel. I hope Andrea thinks about doing one. The other book that was launched in Portugal, this only exists in Portugal, but I think it would do great if it was published in English. I talked about it to the writer. It was written by Filipe Faria, but the originator of the story is the artist Manuel Morgado. I kind of describe this as Top Cow comics, but with better coloring. It's a fantasy story. Filipe Faria is a fantasy novelist, but he's been published abroad, but not in many countries. And the story, if you can get it from the name Dragomanta, Dracomancer, it's about a group of people who can control dragons, but they can't breathe fire, and that fire is transferred to the sorcerers. This is book one, so there's going to be a sequel soon, hopefully, maybe next year or in 2 years. Manuel Morgado is a very good artist. This is his first big project. Check it out. I like this. I think it's going to have the sequels. It's marked as book one, so we're going to see more of it. And by the time book 2 or 3 come around, I hope that they can get this published in English so that everyone can enjoy it. A few other things that I bought: Portuguese edition of Portersfield by Mark Wade and Paul Azaceta. Kind of an odd choice for the market, but it's from Boom Studios originally. But the publisher in Portugal is G. Floyd, and they're actually a Danish-based company, and they have offices in Poland and Portugal. Since these are small markets for comic books, so what they do is they publish the same comic in 3 different places. And in order to cut down costs, they use the same printing plates, except for the black printing plate, because that's the one with the dialogue. So they save costs, and this one is actually pretty cheap. I haven't taken it out of the wrapper yet, but it's about 120 pages for 12 euros. That's about $15-16, and it's hardcover, so much cheaper than in the United States. Also bought the Brazilian edition of Electra Assassin. This is a book, but it's made for the newsstand market in Brazil. A few copies reached Portugal, and I had never read Electro Assassin, and that was a flaw I needed to correct. Uh, since in Brazil they sell these at the newsstands, this is actually ended up being pretty cheap. It's €7, so it's a bit less than $10. A great way to get Electro Assassin in the collection. I'm going to enjoy this. I miss good old Bill Sienkiewicz with the crazy coloring in the 80s. In the 80s, when Sienkiewicz adopted his new style on the New Mutants, it was a bit jarring at first, and I was not even 10 years old, so I wasn't used to seeing this type of art in superheroes, but I ended up enjoying it immensely. And finally, the Rocketeer Artisan Edition from IDW. It has the complete Rocketeer stories in black and white, shot directly from the original art. They've managed to locate all the original art for the Rocketeer from that David Stevens did, except for 2 pages. Those are marked that not the original art, but everything else is the original. You can see little details, blue pencils on that hadn't been properly erased in some places, uh, margin notes occasionally, where there's a paste step job. I remember reading parts of the Rocketeer that came out as a graphic novel by Eclipse, but those were not the complete story at the time. Um, and I've always wanted to have the complete story because that graphic novel ends about halfway through what the movie was. And I saw the movie. I enjoyed it immensely. I can't remember if I read the graphic novel before or after I saw the movie, but I knew what Rocketeer was in both cases. So I probably saw some promo art or some advertising for it. And when I later found out that there were more stories, I knew that I wanted to read them. I think of Dave Stevens, like Mark Schultz. They were two independent artists from the first half of the 80s that were very talented, great storytellers, but they never moved to work at a professional level for the big two, and it's a real shame because Dave Stevens is never going to be thought of like Frank Miller or John Byrne or George Perez just because he never worked for one of the big companies, and that's a real shame. So if you don't have the Rocketeer, you should buy it in any form that you can because this is something that needs to be in your collection. For the most discerning comic book fans, I'm sure they know of it. But if you're only into Marvel or DC and you've never heard of this book or another version of it, The Rocketeer, you need to have it. You need to read it. This is an amazingly fun story set in the 1930s before World War II. Really fun, and that's something that you're missing out on if you've never read it. So that's it for today. Oh, Samuel's here. Hi, Samuel. I'm actually about done. You get. I showed off a comic book haul. So in case you're coming in late in the stream, once more, let's show everything. So French comic, Giant, set in the 1930s. It's about people that worked in construction. People that worked in construction of the big skyscrapers in New York in the 1930s. Book 2. I think you'll like this, Samuel. I mentioned earlier in the stream that this is something that you'd like if it was published in English. I don't know. I don't know if it will be. I hope it is. It's got amazing art. So once more, Portuguese edition of Man Plus, original from Titan Comics, but since the author is Portuguese, he's finally getting it done in Portugal. Another Portuguese book, Dragomante. It will probably be available in English as Dracomancer once they get to have the rights sold. Portuguese edition of Mark Waid's Potter's Field. Brazilian edition of Electra Assassin. And The Rocketeer. And the only book I couldn't show, the Portuguese edition of The Goddamned, because I haven't got the book yet from my friend who stayed with it, just so he could get R.M. Guera to sign it. So I think there's people coming in just as I'm about done. But so this was from a convention that we had last week. It took me a while to get all the videos taken out of the cell phone, and I had a lot of work this week, but I've finally done it. And there's going to be another type of convention in about 2 months. It will be in Beja, in the south of Portugal. We don't have any big names announced yet. I know the organizer has some big names, and I'll be going there as well, like I did last year. So also don't forget to go to my channel's page and see the 3 other videos that I did about Coimbra BD. They have me talking to Filipe Faria and Andrea Lima Araújo about their comics. Also, the art exhibit that we had about Tex, and a short video that I have about the dealers' tables that were present in Coimbra. They filled up a room of the local library. So thank you very much for coming. Ted Comics was just here in the beginning to say hi. He had a family function. And thank you, Bet Avenger and Samuel Trejo for stopping by. And I will see you as soon as possible with another video. Thank you very much.